Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Book to Block, the series where I bring my fantasy novel to life in Minecraft one block at a time. Today's episode, we're going back to building in the city, and we're going to be working down over here on the shops. So let's get to it. So lately with my builds, I've been focusing on big, entire, just singular builds, kind of like the huge library or my temple or even the Great Hall over here. So I want to do a bunch of individuals, kind of like how I did my housing, how I did my backstreet shops, and how I did my warehouses. So today we're going to be working over here on the kind of more high-end shopping area. So it's not going to be like the market here. These are probably going to be replaced with like tents if I can help it. Because I wanted this to feel more like a pop-up shop kind of feel. But these are like the permanent shops. So first things first is I gotta remove all of this, all my marker lines, because I'm not actually gonna keep it the exact same shape as what I planned. That was more just like an idea. So I had an idea for how I want to do everything. What does this say? Shops. Okay, so I planned this long ago. Let's fix up all these lines here. And we have a lot of space to work with. So this is a lot larger than what we've had for the housing or basically anything else. I left a lot of space. So what I might do is I might shift the path back a little bit, or I'll just build huge builds for this one. Let's see how we go with that. All right, so the land is cleared. I've adjusted this little bit here. Eventually I'll go in with the half slabs to make it a little smoother, but still don't know where I'm gonna cut it off and where the builds are gonna go. So I have a general idea of what I wanna do. I'm simply gonna do what I did for these ones. So I'm gonna pick a shape, sort of like one of these, just like the outline of it, build them in up until around here. Because then going over here is the residential district. So maybe I'll cut it off around here, have maybe a little gap, like a park or something, which is kind of harder to do in these kind of builds, because I've set so many restrictions for myself. Like when I was doing the village, it's a little harder to see. It's a little weird when it's in the distance, but it's like got no restrictions. It's just on a lake, so I can use whatever blocks I want as long as it's not too silly or too colorful. Just trying to. The only restriction is the kind of theme of semi-medieval, but not quite medieval. So, but over here, I decided no wood at all, unless it is the specialty of this. But this is going to be like the pale oak. It's going to be a little more rare, only expensive things like the church can use it, or maybe the bank might be able to use it. But for general, just like the main street houses or main street shops, they don't really have access to that material. So we're going back to the kind of deep slate with maybe a bit of copper. I'll try and incorporate that again because I want that to be a theme throughout the whole build. I've kind of left it behind on some parts. Last time I think I did it was over here, and it was the weathered or exposed copper. So over here, I'm going to go around, make the shapes for them, and kind of have a theme, but I just got to figure out how to turn it into just like the deep slate. And then for me, I tend to keep the tuff for the floor, so I can't use tuff on the roof. So I might do like the walls out of the bricks, and then either the roof out of tiles or the polish, depending on how it looks. I might go for the tiles just because it's a little bit more of a uniform, and then we use this for accenting on the wall. But first, we got to get the shape done. So I want to keep a little distance away from the lava because I want to leave options for things to be kind of around here. That's what I did for this side. So kind of leaving a small gap for details later on. So I think here's actually probably a pretty good area. So we're going to go along, lower my speed so I can get better control. And we're going to draw a line. Nice and simple. Cross, not all the way to the path. We want to leave a little bit of a gap in between. But I like the feeling of having it like kind of cramped. So when you're like walking through, you can still see the sky, but it's not like a open area like it is now. All right, so first shape here, kind of just the general weird L. Obviously, it's not quite an L, but I think this is a bit too close to the wall because I like overhanging the roof by a little bit. So we're just gonna shift it in a couple because it's kind of like what I had over here on the houses. It's one of them. Like they're getting very close. So like if you're on the wall, I mean, if you had a good jump, you could jump on top of these roofs, which I don't really want. Another thing I have to come back and fix, I use the auto shade of Axiom, and while it kind of works well for some things, I don't think it worked well for these builds. I like the kind of messiness I got, but I think I used too many blocks using the bricks, cobbled, and polished. It just looked a little kind of too messy. I like what I did for these guys over here, where you can kind of see a slight texture. Over here, also a little bit too much. I think, like, because when you get a distance, it looks kind of messy. Like, it's kind of just, like, scribbled in. So I might go back and do, like, a detailing episode where I kind of fix all the detailing. Because, like, over here, I guess I missed this side. On the front, it looks a lot better with the mix of them. So I guess I need to do a little bit of detailing on this side so it doesn't look too uniform. But getting back to what we're meant to be doing in today's episode. So for this, we're just going to build all the shapes first, make sure that they can all fit in here and that they're not too cramped in. Alright, so I've got the general shape I want for each of them. So I got the one that I started, and I like to plan where I'm going to put the door, and then kind of bring the path up so I can kind of get a feel for like how things are going to be walked through. So like if I were to be coming from this direction, and this build's got this huge probably wall right here, it probably makes sense to probably have like a glass window, kind of like if we fly over here, I've got for these downtown ones. So showing off their wares the best way, it's kind of advertising the only way they can. So that's how I would think to use this one. So it's there, and then we get along a little bit further. This one, I made a huge one and then decided I don't want like just one big shop, so I just subdivided it. So now we got three kind of living on the same one. So this is going to be one big build, but it's just going to have walls in between. So in my backstreet ones, in the backstreet builds, a lot of them are connected as you can see, but I kind of made the distinction between each of them by having different roofs. This one's probably going to be just its own entire build, so like I'm not even going to think about the walls, and then I'm going to put the walls in later. And then another one that's slightly divided, it was a little bit too big, so I just put a line in between. I can shift it around. This one's going to be interesting because I decided to try for a slanted wall instead of just the flat ones, because the flat ones are so much easier to build with. So give yourself a little challenge every so often. And then a last one to kind of just like round off the edge, because that's where I feel like we're going to have a little bit of public space. Not sure what I can do there. If you guys have any ideas of what can be kind of the public space, because I can't use like a garden, maybe a park. I would just have to kind of figure out how to make that in this kind of terrain and area. But before we get to building these, I gotta create my style for these ones. So I started off by getting a small little area planned out, this little place in the sky here. I made my quick little shape, chose my front door, used the basalt for the uh, walkway, the road pathing, and then changed out the flooring. So now I just got to decide how I want to do it. So I'm going to do it in like steps. I want to get the first floor, and then the second floor, I'm thinking I'm going to expand it out. So I'll show you what I mean in a second. All right, so I brought up the walls a little bit and then started making these posts. So this is how I like to start builds usually. I usually start with these posts on the outside, but it's usually made of like wood, kind of like how I do all my village builds. But I decided to go slightly different. So I'm using the polished as the kind of posts and then the deep slate as the regular walls. Plenty of space for windows and things like that. Gotta fix this up. So now we have our door. I can maybe make it bigger, but it's good for this size of this build. So next thing I did is I went around with these kind of stairs, because the next floor of the build is going to be kind of out here, just expanding it slightly. Maybe I'll bring it back one in, but that's kind of the idea. I want it to support itself slightly further out than it already is. Then I went in with a kind of liner block, so this will be kind of the in-between floors. So what I also like to do is actually just walk inside the build. If I have the roof here, does this feel huge? Because I mean, 2 blocks is about 2 meters. This is a really tall person. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 meters tall. That's about what? 14, 15 feet tall. I don't know the conversion that well, but that is a massive ceiling. But it also is good for kind of showing off merchandise and stuff. So then the second floor might be slightly shorter than the first floor is, just to kind of balance out that shift of like size. So the next thing I gotta do is I gotta get the shape of the second floor on. All right, so second floor is starting to get a shape. I've kind of left the back for now because I want to figure out the design. So because I'm just gonna basically copying the same thing just at different proportions. So I moved out the copper slightly. These ones are still in the wrong spot, just so I could get this like kind of edge rim of it. So just a little bit of accent there, kind of deep within like inside of the wall itself. I also started working on some windows, trying to get the right eye line. So this feels a little bit low, so I just brought it up slightly. Just gotta figure out how I'm gonna actually put a window in this like 1.5 tall space. But we're going into a different block now with the deep slate tiles, using a bit of the walls for accent, just the different color. And it just doesn't feel too messy yet, so we're still good. Still missing a bit of detail in this front area, that can come later. Now we gotta get to the roof. So I'm not sure if I want to go just straight with the deep slate tiles all the way up, peak roof or flat top roof or whatever, or if I want to kind of get a different one. So stairs, and then I just start going, pick one. Let's try the mud stairs. It's a little messy in comparison to what I want, but I can always do an easy replace later just to get the shape first and then worry about the coloring afterwards. Kind of hard to place these sometimes, but I think that might work. We might go with one of the coppers. So if we copper, so I've got all these different colors. So I can go from the bright orange, which I probably won't do, to the waxed, or not the waxed, the exposed, to the weathered. Probably not oxidized just because it's such a bright color difference. So if I go and we do we go grab one of each. So let's grab the wax versions just because the tick speed in this world is quite fast. Don't want it oxidizing right away. So put these next to them. You kind of have to take a look. Do I want those two colors together? Don't think so, so remove that one. We've already got the copper, so let's remove that one. So it's a race between these two. So I'm feeling more of this one, but maybe if I remove this, it'll give an unpartial kind of feel to it. Because this one feels very bright and different in color. So I'm going to mull over this a little bit. Maybe just build the roof with a different block and then come back in and replace it with whatever one I feel fits best. All right, here is the roof. So just done the very basics, left all these kind of blank. There's plenty of detail I can do with like maybe some arches in here if I were to go like that or something, but that can come after. I want to get the main part, which is the roof, which I admit feels a little bit flat. So I might go and lower this part here, like these parts, so that this kind of can go all the way back and have a little bit of difference on the top, so it's not so flat. But before we get to that, I want to choose the block type for the roof. So I go and I just take stairs. And then I go through and just grab whatever I think might work, throw it in my inventory. Then I come back into Axiom, throw my blocks, the stair that is the roof, as my mask. I choose the active block of the one I want to replace it with. Then over in Painter, using the copy properties. Because if you just do something like this, it's going to mess everything up. It's going to make them all the same. So what you do is you copy properties, and if you just drag, it's going to copy it and make sure it grabs their proper one all the way around. So that's an option for the tough. Okay, let's try this one. So then I'm going to undo, or I could just change the mask. So we're going to do this. So that's another option. Let's try the weathered. So I can also just do that. And now this is the new one. So that's adding a lot of color. So that's an option if I want to add a little bit more color to the area. All right, let's go with red nether brick. This is just another random one I thought of. So that would be very cool, but more for a fantasy type, I think. And then I'm going to also go for just the regular nether brick. So this one's a little bit more tame, actually. Kind of gives a cool color, because I do want a little bit of difference in color, because if I go through all my builds, it's very gray, a little bit of the brown from the mud everywhere that I try to start incorporating in. But this can maybe symbolize a more affluent, little richer population because it's the high main street shops. So I'm actually kind of liking that. A little bit of difference. Maybe if I go back in, we undo that, and I use the noise painter. Does it also have a copy properties? It maybe it does if I let's grab this one in, copy properties. There we go. So now if I do this, we can get a little bit of difference, but I want to lower the scale and we get a little bit of detail. Let's lower my speed. It's kind of hard to see. Let's change where the sun is just so it's a little bit more out of our eyes. Gives a little different look. I think this actually looks kind of cool. So this might be actually the winner. I kind of did these as like a joke just to show random blocks can work, but this actually kind of looks cool and adds a little bit more color to everything. So maybe I'll go with this one, and then of course I'll have to change the roof. But this is basically a done build, so I might actually place this one somewhere, maybe on one of these top bits down here. Probably not over there because I want to bring the housing, because these ones, I don't know if I've shown in a past episode, I just grabbed these from those guys and just started pasting them over here just to make everything feel a little bit more full. These ones here will probably need to be bigger versions because even these ones are feeling kind of like empty in the back. Really need to figure out what to do to fill these empty gaps because I've got them all over the city. Some over here, a little bit less because I designed these ones to kind of fit to the back. And then for like these areas here, I started kind of messing with the terrain so it wasn't so flat. This is kind of a lost area. Kind of just got destroyed when I was working on it. But I need ideas for kind of filling the area, kind of like what I did here with one of these broken vats. It just fills up the area, gives it more life. So if you guys have any ideas for what can be used like in between builds, just for like just decorations, leave it down in the comments. I'd appreciate it very much. But you might notice the video is getting kind of long at this point, and I don't want to go for too much longer. So the rest of this episode is just going to be a time lapse of building all of these kind of builds in this style. So it's going to be many hours condensed into like 30 seconds to maybe a minute, and we'll see how it all turns out and how much more full this city looks. So let's jump into it. Alright, that is a lot of the progress done. So I brought over the one that was floating there and just brought it here, kind of snuck it up top here. And then I basically copied the exact same formula over and over. That's what's nice about these kind of cookie cutter builds that I like to do, is that it's basically the exact same build over and over, but it's the shape that kind of gives it its uniqueness. Every time I make a slightly different decision where things kind of change with like the back here with the slanted bits versus having these ones are 3 wide doors, which I split into 2 separate doors versus the 2 side by side. Gives a different kind of roof. These ones are pointier, this one's a little flatter because you have to have that single block in between. Things like that just give it the uniqueness. I also went in and kind of did the detailing. I'm not sure how I like it. I'll probably come on to this world every so often and see, maybe I'll try something else. And that's the nice thing. I can just redo it over and over until I am happy with it. Now, one thing that I have noticed is this entire area feels flat. And one of the reasons is obviously there's no like terrain destruction, kind of like how I've got out here. But another one is something I found recently is using different blocks like this to create texture. So I'm going to go over here and kind of test it out, see how it looks. So come into Axiom. I've selected the black stone up here, so only that will be affected. And then about 50% is going to turn into the cracked brick. So if I just go around like this, and you can just already tell there's texture there. It just looks so much better. So if I just drag this around everywhere, at least in this area, so I can get a better look, that just looks 100 times better. Because like, look at this. It might not be able to show through the video, but on my screen, the left side here looks so much better than the flat side on the right. So I'm going to come around and do the same for all these kind of finished areas. I'm going to leave it alone for the outside just because that can be like a later on thing that I work on. This is also going to affect my weird shading stuff up here. So that's another project for down the line. I got to fix all those buildings for the residential before I start pasting them over into the other locations, like over here, because I don't really like the black stone on the back of these. So we got to fix that up. So all that is left for these builds, oop, got a little no clip on, is the interiors. So I'll turn off my shader so we can actually see with my full bright here. So the interiors, it's going to be probably a 2-floor everywhere. So somewhere around here will be the second floor. I've changed off the bottom for tough, so we can just go through each of them. All very tall builds right now. First floor will obviously be the shop. Second floor can either be an extension of the shop with a nice staircase for maybe the larger ones, like maybe not this one. Maybe like this one will have a second floor shop, but the smaller ones, the second floor will probably be like a tiny staircase in the back corner and maybe like living space. Because I mean, think of the size of this city here. It's a lot easier to see with all the shaders off, no kind of fog anywhere. But I mean, that's the only housing, a little bit there. I mean, it's a massive city. It needs more housing. I got a little bit more over there, but I think a lot of them, like even for these ones, some of them have like upstairs that I haven't even kind of done yet. But these could be like the living spaces for the specifics. Like I started like stairs for these ones. This is the bookstore I mentioned, but like a staircase up and then they live up here or something. That's just a way of kind of compacting, getting more of the population realistically. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect where I have like a census going and everything, but that kind of gets a good idea off of it. But I think that is where we're going to leave it for today's episode. There's plenty more to work on the interiors, getting all the shops actually up and running. This just took a lot of time to place all these blocks. I might do a little bit more off camera and then update in the next episode or a future episode, like just kind of offhand remark, oh, I finished the interiors of this one. I came up with an idea for this one. I didn't finish this last one, but it's a kind of easy, just small one. Maybe I do the same for these kind of spots just to fill it in. But this is a lot of progress. It's really filling out the city here, getting a nice overview. Let us turn on the journey map and see. Yeah, there we go. So here is the entire thing and the progress of it is now. So let's do a little recap. So residential, kind of commercial area, more residential, a little bit more commercial. So I've still got the bank and the mint. All of the industrial, so I'll have a massive blacksmith, obviously, kind of dwarven area, needs a blacksmith, like an ironworks to get things into like ingots, and maybe like a horseshoer or armor maker, that kind of stuff will be here. A couple more spots for the warehouses, so I can get a couple more in. And then all the red is basically just going to be copy and paste of these guys here, maybe a little bit more detailed up. I still got like these ones that are like up higher in the city, and I've mentioned higher up in the city, better your situation is. So it's all just a progress to get more and more done every single episode. But if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a like and subscribe for more episodes coming soon. Until next time.